Welcome to Equal Access Sign Language Television. I'm Theressa DuBois, and today we're discussing mentoring. There are so many people that have wonderful careers, and some of them knew when they were very young what they wanted to do. Others have no idea what they want to do in the future. And then there's some that have such amazing talent, it's almost a given that they have to pursue it. What about you? Do you have a dream? Do you have a career in mind that you think you can do, but you need someone to give you direction? Well, today is the show that will help you to see the power of mentoring. With us today is our special guest, Susan L. Taylor. Thank you so much for coming. You mind if I call you Susan?
I'd be honored if you call me by my name, Susan.
Okay. Millions of people know you from the magazine Essence, and you had so much responsibility there as the editor-in-chief. But in December, you decided to leave to start the National Cares Mentoring Movement. Why would you leave such an important position to get involved in mentoring?
You know, I think what I'm doing now is even more important. I gave everything that I had and grew in so many magnificent ways during my 37-year career at Essence. And now mentoring is my passion. And the National Cares Mentoring Movement I really gave birth to as Essence Cares after Katrina. I was looking for something that we could do with those who were coming to the Essence Music Festival that would make a real difference in the life of our community. And you know, it's clear that we have more and more young people falling into peril, more who are at risk, and that the government is not going to save us, and it's really our responsibility to take care of our own and the next generation. So that was the impetus. And you know, you spoke about me having so much responsibility at Essence. I realized that I couldn't continue to write, guide the magazine, produce a festival and conferences, and have a huge staff, and also do the mentoring work. And so the Essence Cares project really wasn't growing in ways that I wanted it to, because I had so many other things on my Essence platter that were overflowing. And now my full time and attention is really focused on how we can save our young people and secure them from coast to coast.
Well, I thank you so much for including the deaf and making deaf welcome, because we have many in the deaf community, African American, that also need mentoring. They have a very limited amount of people that can guide them, people that they know, people that they look at and already esteem. And the main barrier is linguistic. The Deaf Welcome Foundation has set up, as you know, videophones to make sure that every person that wants to communicate with the deaf can do so for free and instantly. That's what this is.
Okay.
This is kind of the newest technology, similar to a webcam on a computer, except this has a direct connection. You don't need to have computer skills. You just press that little orange button.
And stand in front of the camera here?
You stand in front of the camera, and you can see the interpreter, or you can see the person that you're just trying to talk to. Maybe it's your husband, and you can just see each other and talk.
So I'm here.
You're here.
And I'm speaking to a group of people who happen to be deaf, and they're in one location. And there's a signer right there interpreting what I say?
Exactly. And not just American Sign Language, Kenyan Sign Language, Russian Sign Language, Chinese Sign Language, Korean Sign Language. If they're in Nigeria, you can contact them, and the interpreting service is free.
So the idea then is for the community to be able to see the person who's speaking, and for the person who is signing to be right there with them. So they have the visual, and they also have the understanding of what it is that we're saying.
Yes.
I see.
So let's say, for example, there's a young person who's in trouble. I'll give you an example that I know. This young person was told that her boyfriend was not meeting the family standards. And the young person felt, well, you don't know my boyfriend because you don't know sign language. So eventually, over time, that relationship developed a child, a pregnancy. So right away, the hearing parents, now the grandparents, decided to sue the child to take over the parenting. Well, right away, she was upset. You're not going to take over control of my child because I'm deaf. There are many parents that are deaf. So they went to court. All of this problem could have been avoided if the parents could communicate in the home, if they had a system like this, or if they had a person like yourself who understands what it means to have a child without the benefit of a full family like you did many years ago. There are single mothers that are out there that just need direction. If she could have just picked up a phone and called and said, help me, I'm pregnant. Can you show me what to do? Can you give us some ideas? Can you explain what's going to happen to my world now? And maybe mom had a point, or maybe she didn't. But without access, they had to go to the court system, and it became a fight.
So with all, I mean, those of us who are not deaf have so many issues. I mean, we struggle with depression and insecurity and all the things that, you know, stress us and take us off course. In the deaf community, how does one reach out for therapy? Are there therapists who bring deaf people together in groups or individuals or individually for that kind of support?
Yes, and it is a wonderful thing. But oftentimes, because the deaf community is relatively small, even though it's large, what ends up happening is that in the therapy session, you have people that you know from your deaf church, from your school. In one case in New York, the therapy session is at a high school where many of the deaf have grown up. So you graduate high school, you go off, you get a job, you seem like you're successful, you get married, and now you have problems that come up. Do you want to go back to your old high school where the people were proud of you and admit that you have problems? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a setback. Mm-hmm. So some of them will just avoid it and just not go at all because they would prefer to have privacy. And even though interpreters are bound by a code of ethics, you know, they're going to keep the information private. Yeah. That's the law. There's that fear that you know my personal business and maybe it will get out.
What are some of the issues, the major issues that the deaf community may be struggling with that those of us who are outside of that community may be totally unaware of?
Well, speaking as a hearing person, my background, as you know, vocational counselor for many years in the deaf community, what I've observed myself is the literacy issue. When you're not skilled at reading English, then it prevents you from a lot of things that you would need access to that now you can't receive. You're relying on interpreters to tell you. So now you go to a service, maybe Social Security, and you have to remember everything that you're told. Supportive services, whatever it is, if it's printed, who's going to tell you what it says? Who's going to interpret it for you? So many services, because of the literacy issue, get lost.
Must be a lot of shame around that too, not being able to read.
There's a lot of shame.
Yeah.
But do you admit it?
Yeah.
You know, just like the functional illiterates in the hearing world, you hide it.
Yes.
So many, and I've seen situations even in court where a deaf person will say, the judge will ask, do you understand everything that you've been given? Did you read the information? And they'll say yes. But they didn't read the information. An interpreter abbreviated the information. And they certainly can't review it at home. So we're trying to encourage more and more businesses and organizations to utilize the service for free interpreters and to allow Deaf Welcome, the foundation, to actually videotape so that they have a Deaf Welcome library. So the printed information can be read in sign language.
I see. Now, the National Institute for Literacy in Washington, D.C., part of the Department of Education. Sandra Baxter is a friend, a partner in my National Cares Mentoring movement, and they have sites all over the country and reams of information. Do you know if there's any outreach from the National Institute, they call it NIFL, to the deaf community?
Not that I'm aware of.
Wow.
Oftentimes they will provide numbers. It'll say TDD, which means they have the old-fashioned telephone typewriter, which is only good for people that can read and write English. Then they can type or text message what they're trying to say to you. But if, for example, they are from a different country and they don't know English, well, now that's a problem. They can't use the TDD to communicate. But it's the law, and it complies with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Okay, what we're saying is use a video phone so that the live interpreter can voice what is exactly being seen that the deaf person is signing, including their modulation, the way they're speaking, their sense stress. You can catch all that. You miss that in a type form. So we're trying to encourage people to think about different ways to provide equal access. It's not always the interpreter. Sometimes it is the typewriter, the TDD. But just ask, what's the best way to communicate with you? And when you talk about inspiring, there's some, I was just recently, we did the show in Branson, Missouri, and there was a little African-American girl. She came up to me after the show, and there were very few African Americans in Missouri in that audience. And she was looking at me with these big eyes, and I had done a little Tina Turner piece, Proud Mary, and I taught the audience how to sign Rolling on the River.
You were actually up there doing
I
your
was
thing?
dancing.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed that show.
I was rolling on the river. I wish Tina was with me on that. We had the hair and everything. It was something. But anyway, I didn't like the hair, but whatever. It was a moment. But this little cute little girl came up to me, and she said, "I love the show." She's signing, and I asked her, "Do you dance?" And she stepped back because dancing. But the deaf do dance. But she had hearing parents. And they're thinking because she can't hear, she can't dance. But she can feel the movement. But see, that limitation, not being given that opportunity, that presentation, is a limit that without mentors, it may keep her in that box. There are deaf dancers in Washington, D.C. that actually travel all over the world as sign dancers. They feel the movement, and they learn what the words are through someone like me interpreting, and they're actually sign dancing everything.
Fabulous.
And it's beautiful. And many of them are deaf. But I just said, you would be a beautiful dancer. I'm just looking at your legs. They're beautiful. She's about 7. But just to give her that idea, to put it there. And maybe she'll never be a dancer, but why not give her the opportunity, that mentoring? Just another thing to do so that she's not just home, sitting, bored, waiting for trouble to come to her door.
And I'm going to get in touch with NIFL and see if we can broker a relationship. We'll ask them first if they have any outreach to the deaf community. So what else should I know? What else should I know that I can take back to the hearing community that would help our deaf, folks?
Well, the Deaf Welcome Foundation just set up the very first Deaf Welcome Center in the country. And what we're doing is allowing the hearing world to learn about deaf culture. We have a Deaf Welcome Art Gallery, a Deaf Welcome Theater for live events, and sign language TV, in addition to workshops where people from mentoring programs can come in and have an audience with deaf and hearing together, and we actually record it so that the deaf can actually remember that place and time where they learned about the different topics that we have on the agenda. We want the hearing to get involved, have them contact us, actually schedule an appointment. Every Saturday will be available starting in the fall where they can come in and we can film their workshops. And with their help and their support, we can give them free video phones.
Oh, that's excellent.
So that when the deaf go to them, they have access to interpreters for free. You know, they don't have to turn away the deaf or family members that have deaf. They can all be together.
Theressa, I mean, I know I'm here on your show, but I feel like this should be my show and I should be interviewing you. I am totally fascinated by the love and the passion, you know, that you have for the deaf community. And what brought you to this?
Well, when I saw an African American woman had gone for the first time to Washington, D.C. with her son. He was about 9. She came back and she told me that we were slaves. She had never known that. And I thought, I was very new with sign language at the time. I'd only been signing for maybe 7 months.
So what led you to sign?
A woman in my church came up to me and asked me would I learn sign language so she could follow the service. I tell that story all the time. I thought I told you that. But she asked me and I told her I would try.
Okay.
I might be lousy, but I'll try. I mean, how do you tell someone no when they're asking you for religious reasons to do something? Well, I started kind of teaching the Bible, and they would teach me the signs. And I really was lousy. But she was so wonderful. She would always say, thank you, and I love you, when the service was over. But this woman, this African-American woman that had gone to the school trip with her son, had just learned that blacks were slaves. And she came back to me and she said, well, if you know, then tell me if you know. And I'm thinking, well, that's really a bad joke, but maybe it's a deaf culture thing. So I said, okay, in my limited sign language, a long time ago, there were white farmers that needed help in America, and they went on boats to Africa, and they picked as many people as they could find that could help them and work for free. And they loaded them in the boats, and they came back, and they forced them to work. She said, you do know. You do know. And I watched her become Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and JFK all in like seconds. And I could see all the emotion, and I said, calm down, calm down. And I said, remember, long time ago when this happened, was God here? And she said, yes. Did God see? She said, yes. Who did he send to make things right? Who's his son? She says, Jesus. Okay. Well, where is Jesus now? She said, heaven. Okay. Does Jesus have any plans to make the world better? She says, yes. Okay. What he's asking us to do now is love. The people that are to blame did not escape God's notice. Just love. And that's when I realized there's more to this situation. It's more than just interpreting at the church service. These people need more education. And I realized that when people were fighting for Black history to be in public schools, nobody was fighting in the deaf schools. So they missed it.
So it's
I should say
signing.
some missed it.
So signing is really made available, you would say, right across the board to almost every deaf child, yes?
It depends. It's available, but there's some parents sometimes that say, I don't want my children to learn sign language. I prefer them to learn to read lips.
Yes.
And I've met many deaf that have learned signing after they went to college, and they realize this is a real help, and they catch on real quick. But whatever their situation, my thing is equal access. If they prefer to lip read, that's up to them. If they prefer a videophone, fine. They prefer a TDD or TTY, that's fine. But ask them.
Right.
Make deaf welcome. And if they know Spanish Sign Language, which is different from Mexican Sign Language, provide the interpreter. And if you say, how? Don't say, well, because I don't want to pay $35 an hour or $50 an hour with the 2-hour minimum. I don't want to pay that. Join the Deaf Welcome community.
Tell me about the Deaf Welcome community. Your foundation is targeting what population?
Where, when you say targeting, we're trying
Your audience.
the mainstream. The Deaf Welcome Foundation is a hearing organization that is encouraging mainstream business to make deaf welcome when they arrive. So when they're at the banks, they shouldn't have to go home and call you. They're here. So now that they're here and they want to apply for a mortgage, then allow them to just use the Deaf Welcome Videophone through the interpreter and talk with you.
Okay, so a person comes to the bank, a deaf person, I'm the banker. Would I have to know, I have the Videophone, would I have to know that that person is coming so that the signer could be available, or are the signers always there waiting for phone calls to come?
They're always there, 24 hours.
Really?
So there's no wait.
That's amazing.
It is
so then
amazing.
The challenge is really just getting this phone widely distributed, and now it's free?
Yes.
That's amazing.
The Videophone is free. And we just need to advertise to get it out. Yes.
You need a PR machine to really get ads.
Excuse me, I'm having a Jesus moment. Amen. Yes. Yes.
You need ads on television, simple 30-second spots. You need ads in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, all the national newspapers, because people are totally unaware of this. I'll tell you, about maybe 9 years ago, I got a letter from an Essence reader who had come to the music festival. And during the day, I had these wonderful empowerment seminars where I brought healers, teachers, leaders, everybody, you know, good writers to speak to the community. And a woman wrote to me and she said, you really need to have somebody signing. It never occurred to me. You know, and we're talking about seminars with incredible information from 11 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the very next year, proudly, I wrote to her and said, we'll be signing from the opening session right through the very end of those sessions.
God bless you.
Now, what about concerts? So you're at a concert.
I'm happy you said that.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the friends know and the audience knows that I kind of moonlight as a sign dancer.
Oh.
I'm like a Sade in sign dance.
Wow.
As far as singing, it's a beautiful thing. By adding the interpretation of the song, the deaf can see the lyrics, and it is beautiful. I'm always surprised because hearing people enjoy it even more than the deaf. The deaf, you know, they can feel the beat, you know, in a concert hall.
Feel it?
You can feel the vibrations.
Yeah.
The vibrations. The next time you're playing music, I want you to touch something in the room. You actually can feel it. Okay, and in a concert hall, it's all over you. But now they can see the sign happening at the same time, so they understand the words. And for the hearing person, they're watching the dance. So if you can imagine seeing Janet Jackson, but her hands are moving and are actually telling you what she's saying, that's sign dance.
I see.
And it is so much fun. And I used to do it just to kind of practice for the church service. So whatever the song was, like right now, like my favorite songs, I mean, I won't start naming names, but I have some favorites. I went to see one group and we went backstage and we met, and I just gave them a little sample of their song. And they said, can you come with us on tour? Wow. I said, I'm a little busy running a charity, but contact us so that we can actually videotape your music, because it would be so simple to do.
Well, you're so the real deal. I mean, I remember last year, I don't even know that I invited you to come to New Orleans.
You did.
But you came.
Mm-hmm.
I invited you?
Yes.
I sent you an email.
You sent me an email.
I think, you know, but never imagining, I sent it out to a wide network, never imagining that you would come and say, I want to sign. And not only did you come, but you brought other people with you. And so we were able to really sign from the opening to the very end of that candlelight vigil, which was just amazing. So,
and that was in New Orleans.
Yes, that was in New Orleans a year ago. It was called a day of presence. We wanted to focus everyone on the plight of people in New Orleans in a way that would make people pay attention and press their congressional and state representatives, but primarily congressional representatives, to allocate the dollars that are really needed to rebuild, you know, those Gulf Coast cities. And it's so sad that here we are 3 years after, you know, the hurricanes, and still people are displaced and living in trailers. But you know what, I tell you, God is so good, because here we are in the middle of all that was going on, supposed to happen during the Republican National Convention. It was aborted, as we all know, so that folks could all the camera people, all of the major journalists were right there in New Orleans telling the story that we wanted to tell a year ago in a more magnificent and fuller way, and internationally. We couldn't have hoped for that. So I guess, you know, it's really true. Do the work and have walk on water faith, and God will take care of everything. So what else should I know about helping the deaf? I'm glad that I found out about the Videophone. We know we have to get advertising. We have to get we need an awareness campaign, and we've got to get it to business people. So that's critical. What else should we know?
People need to realize that the deaf are really an untapped market. They work. They have money. When you make deaf welcome, it's not just a philanthropic gesture. It's a smart business move, because the deaf go where they're understood.
So how could Macys do a better job of receiving deaf people?
Well, they can actually use sign language commercials, set up deaf welcome video phones in the store. So when they're shopping, customer service, they'd have an easy way to communicate. If they have questions, they would be able to call the different places, the different departments, and just ask. And they'd be right there in the premises, you know, in a different area, in the deaf welcome area. And now they can just walk over to where they need the service.
So there should be a deaf welcome area in major department stores, like in Target and in Walmart's and in Macys and other stores?
Yes.
Oh, does that exist anywhere?
No.
My goodness.
But we're trying,
Yeah.
because many of these places have deaf employees. And so what happens when the deaf employee has a staff meeting? If they didn't hire an interpreter, they're struggling to read lips. And so what happens to the promotion possibility?
Yeah.
It's limited. So now when you talk about mentoring at the most basic level, it can't even happen on the job, because the people that are in the best position to kind of take someone under their wing can't communicate. And that's the thing that I think is most serious, because there are wonderful opportunities for people to bond, and they're missed every day because of linguistic barriers.
I would imagine that very few hearing people have deaf friends. Is that so?
Believe it or not, American Sign Language is the third most commonly used language in America. There's so many people that sign, but you wouldn't see it unless you see us outside signing with each other. It's English, Spanish, and ASL.